That's what I forgot to do last week, and I sincerely apologize for not recording last week. And I encourage anyone and everyone that if I haven't started recording when the class starts, feel free to interrupt and say, "Start recording, silly rabbi." So, okay. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shekidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. For those who watched it live last week, do we have any questions based on last week's class that you want to start with before we continue our studies? Yes,
Just the
Ron.
one question arose when Saul was back home
Yeah,
and he was out with the cattle in the field.
right.
We also don't know what happened to his army. They didn't seem
Right.
to follow him.
Okay, so let's what I wanted to do, because we're at verse 6 on chapter 11 of 1 Samuel, just for Betsy's sake. Welcome to class, Betsy. What I want to do is read the first 5 verses, and that gets to Ron's question. So let's just read the first 5 verses again of chapter 11 in English. Then Nachash, so Saul in chapter 10, chapter 9, Saul is anointed king. Chapter 10, in front of all of Israel, Samuel says that Saul is king. Chapter 11. Then Nachash the Ammonite came up and encamped against Yavesh Gilead, and all the men of Yavesh said unto Nachash, "Make a covenant with us, and we will serve thee." And Nachash the Ammonite said unto them, "On this condition will I make it with you, that all your right eyes be put out, and I will lay it for a reproach upon all Israel." And the elders of Yavesh said unto him, "Give us 7 days' respite, that we may send messengers unto all the borders of Israel, and then if there be none to deliver us, we will come out to thee." Then came the messengers to Givat Shaul, and spoke these words in the ears of the people, and all the people lifted up their voice and wept. And behold, Saul came following the oxen out of the field, and Saul said, "What ails the people that they weep?" And they told him the words of the men of Yavesh. Okay, so these 5 verses raise a lot of questions about Saul and being king. And does he have a palace? Does he have an army? Does he have like a royal court? So none of that, we're not told about any of that. We know a little bit from David and Solomon coming up later in 2 Samuel and Kings, but we don't know anything about Saul setting up such a thing. All we know about Saul is he's out in the field tending his cattle. So what is the king of Israel doing tending cattle? That's not what we picture the king of Israel doing. So I don't have an answer to you, Ron. I don't know why he's out in the field with cattle, let alone why he doesn't have an army. And so what is this story also of the people of Yavesh not running straight to Saul? Like, in other words, you would imagine if there's a king, the king has outposts throughout the empire. So the Israelite empire is not so big. It's just the land of Israel. But you'd think there'd be outposts set up so that the territory is protected, so that if there was an invasion, it would be known about pretty quickly, and the people of a town within the Israelite territory wouldn't have to go running, and certainly wouldn't have to go and try to make peace with the enemy on their own. So that's That's another element of this too. What are the people of Yavesh doing on their own when there's a king of Israel? So clearly, either we're kind of reading the story backwards, that is, the book of Samuel is presenting the story backwards, in that we will see soon that Saul does have a palace, or at least a home that becomes the royal dwelling, and he does have a court. I mean, I'm just think about the Haftarah for when it's Shabbat immediately preceding Rosh Chodesh. So when Rosh Chodesh starts on a Saturday night, that Shabbat morning's Haftarah is not the weekly Torah portion Haftarah, but a special one for for Machar Chodesh, the next day being Rosh Chodesh, and it's a story of David, the story of Saul having a feast for Rosh Chodesh. And there are people who are invited to the feast, and David's place is empty. And the story is about David wanting to know, hey, is Saul really mad at me or not? This is after killing Goliath, whatever. We'll see it all soon. But I'm just saying that I'm bringing that story up because clearly at that point, the Rosh Chodesh meal at the dining room of the king was a thing. So clearly here it's not a thing yet, because the king of Israel doesn't have an army and is still herding cattle out in the fields. Okay, so now let's go on with the text. So we're on page 60 of our text, and we'll do 6 through 10. Vatitzlach ruach Elohim al Shaul b'shom'o et hadvarim ha'eleh vayichar apo ma'od. So Vatitzlach. So we saw that word before, I think last week in chapter 10, and in modern Hebrew, titzlach, lahatzliach means to succeed. Here it means that the Ruach Elohim, God's Spirit, came mightily. That's how our English translation has it here in the Sonsino. Alter translates it as seized. The Spirit of God seized Saul. Okay? So the Spirit of God came on Saul mightily, I'm just translating all the Hebrew words. That's why I'm not leaving it as seized like Alter has, because it's al Shaul means on Saul.
Jonah, sorry, the JPS just says gripped.
Okay, gripped.
That's
So
another.
I don't know how intense the word titzlach is supposed to be to intensify the Ruach Elohim. So that is, the Spirit of God does something to Saul. Does it grip him, or does it seize him, or does it come mightily to him? So gripping doesn't have as much of an intensity as coming mightily, as our old translation has, or seizing, as Alter has. So again, I don't know about the etymology of the word titzlach. I only know it from modern Hebrew. So how the word success in modern Hebrew comes from this, with the Spirit of God coming on to Saul. So the Spirit of God comes onto Saul suddenly, mightily, when he heard these words, that is, that Yavesh Gilad was about to be attacked by King Nachash of the Ammonites, and he got very angry. 7. Vayikach tzemed bakar, vayenat chehu, vayeshalach bechol gevul Yisrael, biyad hamalachim lemor, asher enenu yotze acharei Shaul, va'achar Shmuel, ko ye'aseh li v'karo, vayipol pachad Adonai al ha'am, vayetzu keish echad. So Saul took a yoke of oxen and he cut them in pieces, and he sent them throughout all the borders of Israel. So that is throughout all the territory, I guess all the villages, all the towns, etc., by way of messengers, saying, whoever doesn't come out after Saul and after Samuel, this is what will happen to his cattle, to his oxen, right? So the yoke is cut up. So the warning, you don't follow me, you don't come out as an army. So this is, Ron, this is your answer. Where is Saul's army? He's gathering it right now under threat. So chop up the yoke, send it around the country. People understand, oh, this is a piece of yoke. If I don't follow, then that means my oxen will be cut up into pieces. And so there was a great fear, vayipol pachad Adonai, a great fear of God fell upon the people, and they all went out as one person. That is, they all formed an army immediately behind Saul and Samuel. Now it's interesting that and Samuel is added here in the verse, because Samuel isn't in the story yet, right? Because the people do come crying to Saul in his town of Givat Shaul, but Samuel isn't there. So it's just interesting that Saul says, whoever doesn't follow me and Samuel, their oxen will be cut up. Just interesting that Samuel's added there. Okay, we'll see what commentary says about that, if anything. 8.
I'm
Yes?
sorry. Is it 2 oxen he cut up? One yoke?
He didn't cut up oxen, he cut up the yoke.
The yoke?
Yes, the piece of wood that goes across two oxen.
Because it says plural.
And he took a yoke of oxen.
And cut them.
No, he took a yoke of oxen and cut them in pieces.
That's why I'm confused.
No, the English is wrong, because the Hebrew is it. He cut it in pieces. So I don't know why the English says them. I think that's a typo. So the altar says he took a yoke of oxen and hacked them to pieces. Now, so I wonder, so I'm picturing the yoke itself, the piece of wood. I wonder then if it's the oxen it's themselves that he cut up and sent pieces of oxen flesh around the country. So I'm picturing the wood, and so maybe the English isn't wrong. So we'll see. We'll see from
that kind of harkens back to that story we just read with the cutting up the handmaiden, and
yes,
goes
that's
back
right.
even farther to, was it Abraham who cut the pieces?
Yes, God. You're right. Yes. So I think the immediate reference is to the concubine of Gibeah that we read at the end of the book of Judges. She was cut up into pieces, and pieces were sent around the territory of Israel. So I think that's the immediate reference that we're supposed to have here, and that's probably why it should be understood as the oxen themselves were cut into pieces and not the yoke, the piece of wood. But yes, we could also think about, Barry, the reference back in in the book of Genesis to the vision that Abraham has, that God told him, gather together some calves and birds, cut them in half. So they are pieces, but only two pieces, and then walk between the pieces. And then the God's fire consumed that flesh. All part of
Rabbi,
yes, Dove.
since he was trying to recruit an army, it would
Yes,
have a lot more impact if he was sending out the pieces of oxen.
yes, I think so. That's why it makes sense for it to be flesh rather than wood. Yes, yes.
The wood would be
Except-
hard to recognize. Pieces of one yoke sent that.
Right. No, you're right. You're right. So then there's still the problem with the Hebrew. So the beginning of verse 7, Vayikach tsemed bakar vayenat chehu. So he took a yoke of oxen. So I guess you can apply the term tsemed bakar to the oxen itself as opposed to, more literally, the yoke. So, and cutting it up is because tsemed is a singular Hebrew word.
If you look also, Rabbi, at the footnote on verse 7, a yoke of oxen is a pair.
Yes,
So
right.
so
It's just that, right. But I get that. It's just that it's the Hebrew. I'm just perseverating on the Hebrew and the singular Hebrew, as opposed to there being two oxen that are being cut up. So I would think you'd have the plural. So
Also, it's a threat if you don't come, and the threat
Yeah.
of killing your cattle
yes,
is much bigger, I think, than killing
yes.
the wood
No,
that yokes
No,
them together.
absolutely. Yes. Okay, but I think it's like English and American English do a plural, like regard calling the police, like or the government. The government in English is a singular word, but it's a plural in American English, or vice versa. I don't know.
Vice versa.
Yeah, vice versa. Okay. Anyway, too much about the grammar here. It doesn't matter. I think it makes most sense that it's the flesh of the cattle being sent around the country under threat to get an army together. Okay, 8,
And then my question still stands.
which is
Would be enough?
what?
2 oxen.
Oh, I think so. Oxen are pretty big, and you got 2 of them, and you cut them up into pieces. I think there's enough pieces to go around. And certainly you don't have to leave a piece in each village. Messengers can carry the piece with them and wave it around with them. And like they're in Olney, and then they don't drop it off at Olney Town Center, then and need another piece for Brookville. They just keep the piece with them and just go around like that. Okay? 8. Vayif kedem bevazek vayihiyu b'nei Yisrael 300,000 v'ish Yehuda 30,000. So he counted them in Bazek, wherever that is, and the people of Israel numbered 300,000, and the people of Judah were 30,000. So why Judah separate from all the rest of Israel? Interesting. Is this a foreshadow of the split after King Solomon dies of the kingdom into two, of what will then become Israel and Judah, like the territory of Israel being divided into two under two separate dynasties, the northern kingdom being called Israel, the southern kingdom being called Judah? So is this foreshadowing that? I don't know.
But
Why
more
Judah?
importantly, because I don't see any commentary here. 600,000 came out of Egypt, and
Yes.
now we're down to 300.
Well, 300. I don't know. That's an interesting point. Do we need to think? You would think that the population would have grown since a couple generations before when when they entered Israel. So I don't know about that. What is the ages? Is the age range a little bit different? Is that why it's only 300,000? We don't know, because the 600,000 is 20 to 50. That's how they were counted. So is this maybe 20 to 30? I don't know. We don't know. My issue is, why does Judah have to be singled out from this census, well, especially when Saul is from the tribe of Benjamin? Okay.
I have that Bezek is in the hills of Menashe, 5 miles north of Thebes, Bez, where Abimelech died. It was due west of where Jabesh Gilead lay on the other side of the Jordan.
Okay. All right. I think we would have gotten there, but thank you, Bess. Okay. 9. Vayomru lamalachim habaim, kotomrun leish Yavesh Gilad, machar tihiyeh lachem teshua, bechom hashamesh, vayavau hamalachim vayagidu laanshe Yavesh vayismachu. So they said, now you would think it would be Saul saying this, so it should be Vayomer, but it says Vayomru. So is it Saul and Samuel saying this? So the point is, who's doing the talking? Who's the they? Talking to the angels, the messengers who came. This is what you should say to the men of Yavesh Gilead. That is the town that was under threat from King Nahash of the Ammonites. Tomorrow will be your salvation in the heat of the day. The messengers came and told the people of Yavesh, and they were happy. 10. Vayomru anshe Yavesh, machar neitzei alechem, va'asitem lanu kechol hatov be'enechem. And the men of Yavesh said, tomorrow we'll go out to you. Now, are they now talking to the Ammonites? Or are they talking to their fellow Israelites? Do to us all that is good in your eyes. Right? In other words, it could be the Ammonites. Do whatever you want, because the people of Yavesh know that they'll be saved by the people of Israel. Okay, so let's look at the commentary here. First, in our text, back on page 60, bottom right, the Spirit of God. The resolution and mental vigor with which Saul meets the situation are described as God-given. A yoke of oxen, that is a pair, 2 oxen would be yoked together for work. After Samuel, Saul strengthens himself in this new office by an appeal to the time-honored name and prophetic authority of Samuel. Dread of the Lord, Ehrlich interprets the phrase as a mighty dread. The army is mustered and numbered in Bezek, due west of Yavesh Gilead, on the other side of the Jordan. It was within a day's march of Yavesh. Excuse me. Children of Israel, men of Judah, even in these early days of the kingdom, there seems to have been sufficient isolationism on the part of Judah to require a separate numbering of their men. This separatism led in the early years of David's reign to the temporary division of the kingdom and ultimately to the final rupture between Judah and Israel. Okay, so suggesting, like I did, that this is foreshadowing the rupture, that there's already a sense that Judah is different from the other tribes. Yes, Barry?
I have the older translation, and it says the men of Judah. Judah was counted separately to denote its supremacy above the other tribes.
Right. So there's that too. So within the Bible itself, all the way from the Torah, from the story of Jacob and his 12 sons, we already have a sense of Judah's supremacy, right? So it's Judah who's the one who decides that Joseph is going to be sold rather than killed. Judah is the one to speak on the brothers' behalf to Joseph to convince him not to keep Benjamin as a hostage in Egypt. The blessing that Jacob has for Judah is a more positive one than some of the other tribes. So, et cetera, et cetera. So there's certainly a Judah bias in the entire Bible, because, and simply put, it's the victor, or at least the survivor, who writes history. So we're called Jews, right? Because we're from the tribe of Judah, the only tribe left after the exile of 10 tribes to Assyria, and they disappeared forever. We're actually left with 2 tribes, Judah and Levi. So we're not called Levites, we're called Jews. And because we won. I mean, that's it. Not that we won. We survived. We're the only ones to survive. Okay, so
There's also Judah, the tribe of Judah gets counted separately later on when Saul makes war against Amalek.
Okay.
Yeah. I just read a commentary on it. I don't know
Okay,
this
right. So
myself.
I don't remember that. The story of Amalek is a haftarah for Shabbat Zachor, but that haftarah doesn't talk about a census there.
No, but it's in Shmuel in chapter 15.
Okay, so it's after that,
We'll get
that
there, yeah.
haftarah. So that's why I don't remember it now. Okay, so all right. So yes, so verse 10 here in the commentary, the men of Yavesh said, they sent a message to Nachash, which, leading him to suppose that the appeal for help had failed, would lull him into a false sense of security. That's it. So the commentary suggests what I did, that the men of Yavesh were talking to Nachash and the Ammonites. Okay. So
Rabbi,
yes.
do we know how large the Ammonite army was?
No, it doesn't tell us. We don't know. It was certainly larger than the village of Yavesh, but it doesn't say. Maybe it'll say later in the story. I don't know.
But they're creating an army of 300,000 plus 30,000. So
yes, so 330,000 going out should be an impressive force. Yes, and might require, and it could then allow there not to be any fighting at all. That the Ammonites will surrender, or yes, surrender peacefully. Okay, so let's look at altar on these verses. So we're on 296 in ancient Israel, beginning with verse 6. The Spirit of God seized Saul. As many commentators have noted, the story here explicitly follows the model of the inception of the charismatic leader's career in Judges, when a kind of berserker spirit enters him and ignites him with eagerness to do battle. Saul's coming in from the field behind the oxen is also reminiscent of the pattern in Judges, in which an agriculturalist, compare Gideon, is transformed by an access of the Spirit into a warrior. Given the uncertainty about the new monarchic dispensation, it's quite possible that Saul, after having been proclaimed king at Mitzpah, might have returned to his work in the field, awaiting the occasion when he would begin to act on his new royal authority. The archetypal tale of the farmer who steps forward to save the nation in times of crisis will recur in Roman tradition in the story of Cincinnatus at the plow. Okay, I don't know enough about Roman history and Roman mythology to know that the Cincinnati, Ohio is probably named after Cincinnatus. But anyway, I didn't.
Jonah?
Yes, I went to Jewish day school, not Roman day school. Yes, Bess.
First of all, Cincinnatus was famous because after his work was done, 6 months, he was gone. They offered him everything and everything and everything. And he said, no, I'm done. But
Okay.
Jewish tradition is not an agriculturalist. It's a herder. Since
Right.
Cain and Abel, it's always the shepherd. That's the hero. Moses, David. It's
Yeah.
not the
So
farmer.
it's really a combination because the holidays in the Torah have an agricultural meaning behind it. So it's not that, yes, you're bringing animals to sacrifice, but you're celebrating bringing in the harvest. So it is, I'd say, so it's more land-based. So it's both farmer and shepherd combination. So the agriculturalist tradition, yes, in Jewish tradition, the best leader is a shepherd. David was a shepherd. Moses was a shepherd. Abraham was a shepherd. Yes. So I think that's right. I think he's just comparing this to a Roman example. Just understanding ancient, like there are ancient flood stories. You compare and contrast all the flood stories of different ancient people. So you compare leadership stories among ancient peoples. So that's all. I think that's all he's doing. Okay, so verse 7 on 297 in the commentary there, he took a yoke of oxen and hacked them to pieces. This violent symbolism doubly distinguishes Saul from the model of the ad hoc warrior leader in Judges. The dismemberment of the oxen is an explicit repetition of the dismemberment of the concubine at the end of Judges 19, after she has been gang raped to death by the men of Gibeah, later the home of Saul. In Judges 2, the bloody members were used to assemble all the tribes of Israel to war, though the person who hacked the body to pieces was not a judge, but rather the morally dubious Levite husband of the dead woman. The allusion here is exquisitely ambiguous. Is this an act of restitution, a setting right of the ghastly civil war caused by the atrocity of Gibeah? Or does it inaugurate the narrative of Saul's public actions under the shadow of an earlier act of turpitude? Saul also differs from the judges in behaving like a king, for he prepares for war by instituting a kind of military conscription binding on all the tribes. The judges depended on volunteers and worked locally. Kings, like mafia capos, operate through coercion. Saul, in sending the hacked up oxen parts to his fellow Israelites with the threat, whoever does not come out, thus will be done to his oxen, is presenting them with an offer they cannot refuse. Kind of like the horse head in Godfather. Yes.
There's a commentary here that says Saul cut the oxen into pieces to symbolize that a nation lives only if it is united. If it is disunited and apathetic to the tragedy of fellows, it dies. That's attributed to Malbim. Of course, it has nothing to do with modern times.
Right. Yeah, no, it is fascinating to see. Look, we'll see later in the Bible that the kings have standing armies, and they don't need to go out and call more people into service. So how long were people who were, once they were conscripted into the king's army, how long did they stay in the army? That I don't know, and I don't remember if later in Samuel or Kings it talks about that. But just to understand how this whole process began, it's a pretty violent beginning. So and especially when the process is reminding, it's one thing if this comes like, this is a first time where we're seeing dismemberment used in this way. But if it's clearly a reminder of what happened to the concubine of Gibeah, especially since Saul, it comes from that very town where this hacking of her corpse happened, we have a pretty violent past. So out of violence comes unity. Okay. Out of violence, does peace come? I'm not sure. So it just raises interesting moral, spiritual history of our people. And then if you want to fast forward to 2025 and Israel today, yeah, there are lots of questions about, how morality changes. So it was perfectly fine to cut up two oxen, and send it around to the country to kind of bring people to war. Such violent, bloody images today to be used, not so sure that people would agree with that. I would say there's some in Israel today who would agree with that, especially if the violence is being waged against the enemy. There are some in Israel society today on the far right who would be like Meir Kahane, death to all the Arabs. The Arabs are our enemy, and nothing wrong with hacking them up. But the hacking up, you kind of picture for those not on the far right, who might have a more mellow sense of what morality is supposed to be. Picture Hamas doing what they did on October 7th, being these acts of bloody immorality. So interesting to put this story in a modern context. Okay, so Alter goes on. After Saul and after Samuel, the medieval Hebrew commentator Kimchi offers a shrewd explanation for Saul's adding Samuel to his exhortation. Since not all of them had accepted him as king, he said, after Samuel. Right, so it could be, Kimchi, medieval commentator, like Alter is saying, possibly suggesting here, Saul is hedging his bets. Maybe not everybody will come behind him, but if he includes Samuel in it, then everybody will come behind. The fear of the Lord, this seemingly pious phrase, might also mean a terrible fear, and it is, after all, Saul's frightening threat conveyed by the bloody oxen parts that moves the people. 300,000. As usual, the inflated figure does not reflect historical reality. The 10-to-1 ratio between Israel and Judah does mirror the ratio of 10 tribes to 1. Yeah, probably the tribe of Levi not included in this census, right? The tribe of Levi did not go to war, but so Alter suggesting we're not supposed to give credence to the number presented here. 10 on page 298, tomorrow we shall come out to you. These words are intended to lull the Ammonites into a false sense of security before Saul's surprise attack in the last hours before dawn, which we'll see in a little bit, the morning watch. So in other words, we're told in verse 9 that the messengers say to the men of Yavesh, in the heat of the day is when we'll attack and save you. We'll attack the Ammonites and save you. Now, verse 11, we'll see how it actually comes about. Vayehi mimacharat, vayasem Shaul et ha'am shlosha rashim, vayavou betoch hamachaneh be'ashmoret haboker, vayaku et Amon ad chom hayom, Vayehi hanisharim vayafutsu, velo nisharu vam shnayim yachad. So the next day, Saul divided the people into three. I think that's what it means. Into three parts, three companies. And they came to...
People or men?
I think it's the army. He divided the army into three parts. And they when they went into the camp, that is the Ammonite camp, in the morning watch. So that's the first, so right after sunrise. So that's not the heat of the day. So they entered the camp from in three directions at dawn, and they slew the Ammonites until the heat of the day. So that's probably into the second watch, right? By noon. So from dawn until noon, they were slaying the Ammonites, and the rest that weren't slain dispersed or scattered, and there wasn't a pair left of them, right? They all scattered one by one. There weren't enough of them left to even be in pairs. 12, Vayomer Ha'am El Shmuel. Now here, all of a sudden, Samuel's in the story. Okay? So Saul has been in the story. Samuel has not. Samuel's only be referred to as Saul saying, like the message that the messengers are supposed to take with the pieces of oxen are, you need to follow Saul and Samuel. So we don't think Samuel is an active participant in the story. But now, Vayomer Ha'am El Shmuel, Mi ha'omer Shaul yimloch aleinu, tenu ha'anashim unemitem. So now this is bizarre. The people said to Samuel, who said that Saul should rule over us? Give us those people and we'll kill them. So I don't understand where this verse is coming from. And we'll look at the commentary shortly, but I'm just saying, Saul and his army of 330,000 people just defeated the Ammonites soundly. And now people are saying, who's this Saul? We don't want him to be king. That it doesn't seem to fit. 13. Vayomer Shaul, lo yumat ish bayom hazeh, ki hayom asa Adonai teshuah b'Yisrael. So Saul says, I'm just looking at the English translation. Saul says, no one will die today because this is the day that God made a redemption or a salvation for Israel, or deliverance in Israel. Now, 14 and 15. Let's finish the chapter. There's just an asterisk here next to number 14, which leads to the bottom to say that the Haftarah for the portion Korach begins right here. Vayomer Shmuel el ha'am, lechu v'nelcha ha'gilgal, unechadesh sham ha'melucha. Samuel said to the people, let's go to Gilgal, and we will renew there the kingdom. Now, renewing a kingdom, what does that mean? There hasn't been a kingdom before. If there was before, and then it stopped, then you can say renew. So what does this mean, renewing a kingdom? 15, Vayelchu kol ha'am ha'gilgal, vayamlichu sham et Shaul lifnei Adonai ba'gilgal, vayizbechu sham zevachim shlamim lifnei Adonai, vayismach sham Shaul v'chol anshe Yisrael ad ma'od. So the people went to Gilgal, and they made Saul their king before God in Gilgal. And they slaughtered their peace offerings before God, and Saul was happy there. Saul and all the people of Israel were very, very happy there. So, again, there are parts of this story that don't make sense, they don't follow. It's as if we have pieces of a puzzle put together, and they were put together out of order, because you would have expected 14 and 15 to come someplace else in the story. Like back in chapter 10, after Samuel says Saul's king, we should have had 14 and 15 there. Well, then they celebrated Saul becoming king. But what's verse 13 doing here in a story right after Saul soundly defeats the Ammonites? Why would anybody be saying there that, or 12 and 13, why would anybody be saying that Saul shouldn't be king? Yes, Barry.
It almost seems like the first time it was Saul telling the people that God had commanded, that Samuel telling the people that God had commanded that Saul would be the leader, the king.
Right.
And maybe they accepted it, maybe they didn't. But now it's like a
Yes.
formalization of that almost.
Right.
That's what it strikes me from my reading.
Yes, and it's all, you need a victory in order to prove that you're worth as being king. But again, I'm just saying that the words seem out of place. So let's look at the commentary here first on page 61 on the bottom right. 3 companies to attack at the same time from 3 different directions. See the stratagem of Gideon back in Judges 7. Into the midst of the camp, the Ammonites were so taken off their guard that the attack was not discovered until the Israelites were already within the precincts of the camp. The morning watch, the last of the 3 watches into which the night was divided. Okay, so it's the end of the night, it's not even dawn. And smote the Ammonites on the bottom left of 62. The relief of Yavesh won for Saul the permanent gratitude of the men of that city and of a large part of the territory east of the Jordan. In the struggle for power after Saul's death, it was the men of Gilead who were the real stronghold of Saul's house. So see 2 Samuel 2. And the inhabitants of Yavesh risked their lives in securing an honorable burial for Saul and his sons. See chapter 31. Yes. Right. Saul's defeat, like, I'm not giving anything away because it's in the Bible, that he commits suicide and he falls on his sword, or he asks his servant to strike him through. So we'll see when we get there how it actually happens. But then you can imagine there would be the Saul loyalists, and they're the David loyalists. And then it takes a while for the nation to become wholly united behind David. So that's what the commentary is referring to, that after his death, there's going to be some people in Yavesh who will, follow Saul and his children forever, no matter what, because of how Saul saved them. Okay, so 12, shall Saul reign over us? See chapter 10. Confirmation of Saul as king, renew the kingdom, which had been inaugurated at Mitzpah. This time Saul is unanimously proclaimed king, and having been as yet, as it were, merely king de jure, now becomes king de facto. Rejoiced greatly, see 1 Kings 1:40 of Solomon's proclamation as king. Okay, let's see altar on this section.
Jonah, I have a question.
Go ahead.
So I think that word nechadesh, I don't know, could it be, you said renew, but it could also be just to a new thing. I'm not sure. I don't understand.
I'm not sure about that, Marlene. It's possible.
Mm-hmm.
It's possible, but we sing Chadesh, Chadesh Yameinu, Chadesh Yameinu Kekedem. So there, Chadesh, that's what we sing when we put the Torah back in the ark, if that didn't remind you of that. It's from the book of Lamentations, Hashivenu Adonai v'nashuva Chadesh Yameinu Kekedem. So it's always translated as renew our days as of old. Even though there Chadesh means to start it up from new, from start, but the context means we're renewing it. So here, nechadesh means let us renew,
Okay.
or it could be let us make new. It could be like what you're saying, Marlene. It could be let us make new. So let's see what Alter says on the bottom of 298, verse 12. Saul shall not be king over us. The not appears in some variant manuscripts. The Masoretic text, as it stands, is usually construed as a question. Saul will be king over us? Robert Polzin tries to save the simple declarative sense of the Masoretic text by proposing that after Saul has just powerfully acted like one of the old-time judges, the people, with the implicit endorsement of Saul, are inclined to retract their own insistence on monarchy and return to the institution of judgeship. This reading is ingenious, but may create more problems than it solves. The report of continuing dissidence about Saul's claim to the throne, as at the end of the previous chapter, in fact sets the stage for much that will follow. Right? So it's just maybe this sense that this is not, that the words don't follow this great thing. It just maybe is foreshadowing a constant questioning of Saul's worthiness by the people of being king. Okay, 13, no man shall be put to death this day. Saul's magnanimity, after his demonstration of coercion and military effectiveness, strikes a positive note at the beginning of his reign, though he will later prove to be utterly ruthless against subjects he suspects of disloyalty. And 14, on the next page, 299, we shall renew there the kingship. This clause helps make sense of the triple story of Saul's dedication as king. First, there was the clandestine anointment with no publicly visible consequences. Then there was the tribal assembly at Mitzpah, in which a reluctant Saul was chosen by lot and proclaimed king. After that event, however, he appears to have returned for the time being to private life. Now, following his signal success in mustering the tribes and defeating Ammon, Samuel calls for a new assembly to reconfirm Saul's standing as king, which will then be seen in subsequent episodes, manifested in the institutions and power of a regular court. Okay, so there's that too. Here we have the coming together of the three different ways that the book of Samuel presents Saul becoming king. The private anointment, the public lottery in which Saul's name was picked, and now the public declaration with sacrifices being offered too. Okay. Yes, go ahead, Bess.
Doesn't Israel, the people, they have two main traditional thrusts, one of the judgeships,
right,
and the other one of a military leader, Gideon.
Yes, right.
Saul is somewhat uniting them by his three different iterations.
Yes. That's right. That's
So
right.
So maybe Samuel had a good idea.
Well, again, we don't know for sure how it really worked. This is just the story that is left for us about that time. And the story is from a religious perspective too. So that puts a skew on the story itself. We're not reading like a military history or someone's diary of events. We're reading a religious story after the fact. So that already questions the accuracy of the story too. So this is the only story we have left. There's really not much in archaeological discoveries from the time of Saul in terms of the history of Israel. So I don't think anything has been found yet that has a reference to Saul as king of Israel. We have reference to David as king of Israel, but we don't, or the house of David, we don't have anything about Saul. So we have no idea about anything that could corroborate the story. So what we're left is to figure out what the Bible means to teach us about the history of the people of Israel. It's not so much about, the logistics about how Saul became king. It's more about what kind of king was he and how how devoted he was to God or not. That's the purpose of the book here. Okay, so let's, Dov, did you have a question?
Yeah, just one thing. In this last questioning of whether Saul should be king,
Yeah.
in this last commentary, we're seeing that there are phases in which he's proclaimed king. He goes back and he does his agriculture thing.
Right.
He's king in name.
Yes.
In this battle that he wins, he's asserting himself as king because he's been able to accomplish this. I see from here on in him becoming more of a full-time. His role as king becoming more full-time.
That's right, and that's what we'll be reading in the chapters to come. Yeah. Okay, we stop here for today, and we'll pick up next Friday. We'll have class next Friday. So have a good rest of the day, everybody, and Shabbat Shalom and Shana Tova. Happy and a healthy new year.
Shabbat Shalom.
Jonah.
Thank you.
Good, you're a good week.